Is it possible? Now listen closely. Is it possible that when you pray and you hear nothing, that this nothing is not nothing? Yes. Yes. Is it possible that the very hush that seems to deny you is the beginning of a deeper contact than any words could carry? Yes. And I say it gently, for there isn't a one within range of my voice who hasn't known that ache, that pause that feels so much like an empty room after the guests have gone, the heart straining for one little sign, one whisper, one result. A human being can't help that. A human being can't help that. We were trained from infancy to look and to listen outside. Prove it to me, show me, tell me. So when the prayer brings us to quiet and the quiet brings us to silence, the mind says, God is away. That's not true. Now let us for a minute accept this statement. Silence is not God's absence. Silence is the atmosphere in which God is known. Don't forget this. Be still and know that I am God. Not be busy and know, not be excited and know, not be persuasive and know. Be still. The knowing is prefaced by stillness. Why? Because God is not an object to be located in sound, not a voice to be captured by the ear, not a sensation to be registered on a nervous system. God is presence. Presence. And presence is discovered, not by hunting in the outer, but by resting the faculties that hunt. All right, you say, but when nothing answers me, I feel alone. Yes, to the human sense, silence seems like a closed door. But what if it is the opened door without hinges, the space itself into which the presence comes, not as a thing, not as an effect, but as the very isness of your being realized? What if the so-called gap is not a gap, but a clearing? We who are sitting here now, we can accept that possibility. And in the very acceptance, the strain eases. The breath softens. The mind that demanded proof begins to loosen its grip. Now you come to another law. We do not measure God by sensation. We do not locate God in events. Presence is not validated because a prayer moved a chess piece in the world. Presence is self, and it is known in stillness first, and only then, if it must, appears as safety, as wisdom, as right activity. Tonight we are not going to hunt answers. No, no. We are going to practice a way of seeking that is not seeking at all. Allowing, consenting, yielding. One simple turning. I and the Father are one. That is enough to sit with. Not multiplied truths. One. We will sit until the silence that frightened us becomes the sanctuary that holds us. And in that sanctuary, without noise and without argument, we will discover that what we named absence was the first touch of presence. Now then, watch the reflex. The moment the room goes quiet and nothing in the outer answers, the human mind springs up like a clerk at a counter. Next, and starts looking for evidence. Out to signs, out to results, out to what someone else said in a book, out to a new technique, a fresh method, a different teacher. It turns prayer into a transaction. I prayed, where's my return? I deposited 2 Our Fathers, where is the receipt? Where's the check in the mail? That is humanness. That is getting. And the more sincere we are at this level, the more tired we get, because the very activity we call spiritual is the activity of separation. I here, God there. And the cable between us needs to hum a little louder so I can know it's working. Now let us be honest. because a human being can't help this reflex at first. We go respectable first. One more sermon, one more study group, one more underlined page. Then a little stronger. More prophecy, another date circled, another promise of by Friday. Then subtler. More self-analysis, rummaging our past for the lever that will make God talk. Then the bargaining. If you will only give me a sign, I will. And we fill in the blank with our vow. And then, when the hush holds, the panic. We hop teachers, switch practices, add mantras like beads on a string. And in the night, we reach for the phone, for the horoscope, for the next thing. All right, that is the picture. Respectable to extreme. Getting. Proof, proof, proof. Now hear this, and don't forget it. There are no detached outer effects. All flows forth from consciousness. If you make the outer sign the validator of God, you have just set God at a distance and enthroned effect as cause. You have told your own being, presence is not here. Presence must be demonstrated there. And in that very thought, you have tightened the knot you are trying to loosen. You say, but I need clarity, I need direction, I need something. No, not first. Not first. Clarity is not the first fruit. Presence is. Direction is not the root. Presence is. When presence is realized, clarity comes as naturally as light fills a room when the sun rises. You don't fetch light with a bucket. You open the shutter. Now you come to a law of the spirit. Chasing effects strengthens the belief in separation. The more you run after signs, the faster the signs recede, because you are running from your own center. Seek not what ye shall eat. Your heavenly Father knoweth. If the Father knows, what is the first act? Not hustling in the market for bigger loaves. It is resting in the fact, I and the Father are one. One. Not two bargaining partners. One life appearing as you. One mind knowing as you. One self unfolding as the next right step when the fear of not knowing has been released. Until we accept this, prayer remains a search for evidence. When we accept it, prayer becomes being with God. And in that being, the distance you feared evaporates, not by proof from without, but by presence within. Now let us carry that law right into this question of the silent season. There are no detached outer effects. All flows forth from consciousness. If that is a law, and it is, then the way we interpret silence is not a message mailed to us from a far-off God. It is the activity of our present state of consciousness. Do you see that? The hush itself is neutral. The room gets quiet. That is all. Then what? Then the mind, conditioned to get, to prove, to tally up returns, begins to work. And in that working, it makes a courtroom of the heart. It calls witnesses, past disappointments, delayed answers, something someone once said that sounded like a threat. And now the case is on the docket. The people versus the love of God. Every quiet minute becomes cross-examination. If you loved me, where is the sign? Where is the callback? Where is the door opening? And the gavel pounds, not from heaven, from fear. Now see how loud that becomes. It is not the silence that is loud. It is the prosecuting argument in us that shouts. It turns the stillness into a verdict against God and against ourselves. But the same quiet, listen, this is the miracle of consciousness. The same quiet, appearing to a different state of awareness, is invitation. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow. The secret place is not noisy. It is not theatrical. It is not proof-dispensing machinery. It is space. Space to rest the senses. Space to let one truth become the atmosphere of the room. I and the Father are one. One. Not waiting to be one. One. And in that space, the loudness drops. Not because a trumpet blows from the sky, but because the attorney has left the courtroom and the case is dismissed for lack of jurisdiction. All right. How do you discern the difference? Very simple. Silence with fear feels like emptiness, like falling, like deprivation, like being left outside the house with the door locked. Silence with surrender feels like room. Room to breathe. Room to release the stopwatch. Room to say, Father, thou art here, without demanding evidence. One constricts, one expands. One demands effects, one rests in cause. Don't forget this. There are no detached outer effects. When the inner is settled, the outer will, in its season, show forth that settlement, without strain, without bargaining, without panic. Now you will say, but I have real problems. Rent due, a body hurting, a child needing help. Of course you do. A human being can't help that. We are not denying appearances, nor are we prescribing passivity. We are changing the point of approach. You have been managing effects, juggling them, chasing them, fearing them. And the law is, the more you clutch at effects, the more you certify their power over you. So we turn, quietly, secretly, not to manipulate the picture, but to rest in the truth behind it. Seek not what ye shall eat. Your heavenly Father knoweth. If the Father knoweth, your first act is not to speed up. It is to consent. Consent to presence. Sit in the hush and let the terror say what it will, and do not make its voice the voice of God. Sit until even the fear is sheltered under the shadow. Then, from that abiding, you will find the next right step is given, not as a bribe to keep you faithful, but as the natural outflow of a consciousness no longer at war with its own source. In other words, the pain of silence is not God walking away. No, no. It is the mind's insistence that God present a token in the marketplace. Drop the demand. Enter the secret place. Make of the hush a sanctuary, not a courtroom. And you will discover that what seemed loud within was only the echo of fear in an empty hall. Once presence fills the house, the echo fades, and the house becomes a home. Now we come to the heart of it. And I ask you to accept this, at least to your present capacity. You do not need many answers. You do not need a cabinet full of explanations. You need one realized truth. Your first reaction will be, but I don't know enough truth. I only know 2 or 3 verses. That's not true. There isn't anybody within range of my voice who hasn't enough truth, if only they will stop treating truth as merchandise to collect and begin treating it as life to inhabit. Truth is one. It cannot be divided and it cannot be multiplied. One statement of truth, lived, contains within itself the whole ocean, just as one drop contains the nature of the sea. All right, let us take one. I and the Father are one. Or if your heart leans differently, greater is He that is within you than he that is in the world. Or, all that the Father hath is mine. Choose one, not 3. One. Now hear me, This is not a charm to chant until the room starts to sparkle. This is not incantation. This is consent. This is allowing the statement to announce the fact of being until it ceases to be words and becomes atmosphere. We are not pumping power into a sentence. We are letting the sentence open the shutter of awareness to the power that is already the life of us. Do not turn truth into argument. That is the old trade. Haggling with appearances, cross-examining symptoms, building a case. In silence, we are not striving to outshout the world. We are resting in principle. Be still and know. Not be clever and win the debate. When the mind brings its objections, but the bill, but the pain, but the delay, do not meet them point for point. Do not build a rival courtroom. Simply return to the one truth and let it be the law in the room. Let it be the judge, the witness, the verdict. In that rest, the fear that demanded proof loses authority because cause has been acknowledged. Now, if God is the source of your being and the infinity of your being, if God is inner supply, then silence is not where supply disappears. Silence is where supply is recognized. All that the Father hath is mine, already mine. Not mine when the evidence piles high enough to satisfy the senses. Mine as an impartation from within, unfolding as guidance, as sufficiency, as peace, as the next right step. There are no detached outer effects. The outer picture is the echo of the inner recognition. Therefore, you do not chase the echo. You sing the note. So practice is simple. Take your one truth into the secret place. Sit until the urge to add another sentence passes. Sit until the words thin out and the meaning swells. Sit until the hush warms. And when the mind asks, "Is it working?" answer nothing. Fold the hands inwardly, open the heart, and let the one truth become the air you breathe. In its own season, without strain and without bargaining, the outer will show forth what the inner has accepted. Not because you forced it, but because presence, realized, must externalize as harmony. That is law. That is enough. All right, here is the do this. When God seems silent, stop searching. Stop building a case. Stop looking left and right for a sign. Enter the secret place deliberately, reverently, without agenda. Fold the hands, not merely these physical hands, but the grasping of the mind, and open the heart. Be still and know. Not be clever and extract an answer. Not be urgent and wring a result. Be still. This is the pivot. The next step is not outward, it is inward consent. Now the practice. Go to a quiet chair or the corner by the window, or if all you have is a few moments in a parked car, that will do. Sit. Let the back rest. Let the breath come as it wishes. Do not improve it. Do not control it. Simply notice that breath is already here. Now, dismiss the courtroom. Lay down the brief you are writing to God, charges, exhibits, proposed verdicts. Release the plaintiff, the defendant, the jury. Whisper one truth. I and the Father are one. Or, all that the Father hath is mine. Or, greater is he that is within me. One sentence, not a string of them. Then, be quiet. Now, be still. When the mind jumps up, is this working? How long? What about Friday? Answer nothing. Return to the atmosphere of that one truth as you might return to the warmth of a room after stepping into the cold. Rest. 2 minutes. 5. 10. Until the urge to steer the moment subsides.
Do you see the difference between passivity and surrender?
Passivity is resignation to the picture. Well, I guess nothing can be done. Surrender is active consent to source. Thy will be done, because thy will is the only law, the only life expressing. Passivity slumps. Surrender straightens. Passivity waits on effects to change. Surrender acknowledges cause, God, the life of me now, and lets the changes appear as they must, when they must, without anxiety's whip. This is not neglecting your duty. This is performing your first duty, to know God aright. Now tell me, what does God need from your worrying? Nothing. Nothing. What can fear add to infinity? Nothing. Nothing. Worry is the old worship of effects, the kneeling before second causes. It substitutes excitement for faith and noise for law. Seek not what ye shall eat. Your heavenly Father knoweth. If the Father knoweth, then fretting is not devotion. Fretting is doubt made audible. So let us end it. Close the account. Fold the hands of worry. Open the heart of recognition. What should I expect? Not fireworks. Not a trumpet. Expect a softening. Expect the knot in the chest to loosen a half turn. Expect the prosecuting voice to run out of breath. You may not receive immediate direction. You will, more surely, feel the removal of inner resistance to the direction that is already forming. You may not feel emotion at all. Presence is not an emotion. Presence is the rightness that quietly occupies the room when fear has been shown the door. It is the sense, slight at first, that you are held. Held even before any outward sign justifies it. That is enough. That is the beginning of guidance, of supply, of peace. So when silence comes, do this every time. One place, one truth, one consent. Fold the hands, open the heart, be still. Then rise gently and move through your day without bargaining with appearances. The next step will appear of itself, and you will recognize it, not because you strain to hear it, but because presence, realized, makes its own way known. Now, if we accept what we have already said, that God is the source of your being and the infinity of your being, then tell me, when the room goes quiet, what has been taken from you? Nothing. Nothing. If the fountain is within, who can shut it off from without? No one. Silence does not mean loss. Silence means you have ceased fishing in other people's ponds and have come back to your own spring. Don't forget this. There are no detached outer effects. All flows forth from consciousness. So when the mind says, the line has gone dead, the supply has stopped, that is not law speaking. That is fear. Law says, all that the Father hath is mine. Already mine. Mine in silence as much as in song. All right. Let us bring it down to the level where fear shouts the loudest. Rent. The date approaches, the figures look thin, and there is a hush in prayer. The mind rushes to the calendar and calls the silence evidence. Evidence that supply has failed. No. No. The date is in effect. The figure in the book is in effect. The landlord's knock is in effect. Cause is God, present within you as sufficiency. If you make the figure your God, you will wobble as the figure wobbles. If you rest in Source, the figure must, in its time and way, show forth the sufficiency already established. Seek not what ye shall eat, your heavenly Father knoweth. If the Father knoweth, why will you demand a receipt before you trust? Now health. The body complains. You sit in quiet, and because no thunder answers, you call it abandonment. That is the old worship of symptoms. God is my life. God is my supply. God is my peace. God is my guidance. Let that roll through you, not as magic, but as the acknowledgement of cause. Life is not in the report. Life is in God, and God is the life of you. As fear of the report loosens, the body receives what consciousness declares lawful: rest, balance, right action. We do not manipulate tissues. We yield to life and let tissues obey. Relationships, purpose. These too the mind uses as a barometer. She hasn't called. I must be alone. No word about the job. I must be without place. No. You are not fed by other people's approvals, nor are you employed by chance. Love is of God. Place is of God. If you stop squeezing people for reassurance, you will find love rising from within you as blessing. And amazingly, love returns because it has found its own kind. If you stop fretting for a headline purpose, you will notice purpose in the quietest rightness of the next step. The door you had walked by now feels yours to open. Now hear the correction to the dependency reflex. Every time you measure safety by numbers, by timelines, by other people's moods, you have made God secondary and kept fear primary. You have asked effects to validate cause. Reverse it. Put God first, here, now, in silence, and let effects be effects. They will arrange themselves in obedience to cause when cause is honored. Guidance, you say. But I need guidance. Guidance is not always a voice across the room. Guidance is often the disappearance of compulsion. Guidance is the end of the push to fix, to hurry, to force. Guidance is the quiet rightness that remains when the argument gets tired. It is the sense, very gentle, that one action is clean and another is not for you, not now. You won't need to dramatize it. You will simply find your feet moving in peace. So the silence which frightened you can be the end of neediness, because it severs the old worship of externals and returns you to Source. In that returning, sufficiency is not manufactured, it is recognized. And as recognized, it must, it shall appear, as wisdom, as provision, as companionship, as health, without bargaining, without panic. All that the Father hath is mine. Accept it first in the hush. Let effects follow the law they cannot escape. Now here comes the protest that always comes, and I want you to hear it in your own heart so we can end it. But I don't feel anything. I sit there and there's no warmth, no light, no thrill. Therefore God isn't here. That's not true. That is not law. That is the old worship of sensation. A human being can't help wanting a feeling, yes, but we are not building our life on what nerves report. Presence is not an emotion. Presence is God being God where you are, whether the surface waves sparkle or lie flat. Now let us accept a simple law. Truth is true before you sense it, during your sensing, and after the sensation has faded. When did 2 times 2 start being 4? When you liked arithmetic? When you got goose flesh over it? No, no. It was 4 before your first lesson, and remains 4 after your last exam. Electricity did not come into existence the day you first felt a tingle. It was there, awaiting recognition and lawful use. So it is with presence. I and the Father are one. That is not true because you glow. You glow, if you glow, because it is true. Do not reverse cause and effect. Do not enthrone the thermometer and dismiss the sun.
All right, distinguish this in yourself. Sensation and realization are not the same. Sensation is the body's weather, sunny, cloudy, windy, passing. Realization is the sky itself, the fact of God within dawning as clarity, as honesty, as patience, as gentleness, as the quiet refusal to injure. Have you not noticed that after a period of true stillness, even when you felt nothing, the compulsion to hurry had weakened? That the tongue that would have answered sharply held its peace? That a clean yes or no presented itself without argument? That is presence registering as rightness. That is prayer fulfilled, not as fireworks, but as order. Therefore, practice this law of measurement. Refuse false measures. Do not gauge prayer by mood swings. Gauge it by the lessening of fear. Gauge it by the increase of integrity, the end of cleverness, the end of little dodges, the end of squeezing someone for reassurance. Gauge it by the emergence of patience in traffic, by the readiness to bless a competitor, by the willingness to do the next honest thing without dramatics. When those appear, even quietly, presence has been recognized. Not manufactured, recognized. You will say, "But I sat, and afterward the bill was still on the table." Of course. Effects follow cause. There are no detached outer effects. All flows forth from consciousness. First, the inner court is cleared. Then the outer case dissolves in its season. Do not demand that the fruit appear before the tree is rooted. Watch instead for the end of panic, for the softening of the grip on outcomes, for the capacity to wait without bargaining. Those are your true indicators. Those are the fingerprints of God in the room. Now see what happens the moment you cease using emotion as proof. Silence becomes workable. It ceases to be a void and becomes an altar. You are no longer waiting to be stirred. You are consenting to be aligned. And in that alignment, fear loses credentials, rightness steps forward, and the next step appears not because you felt something special, but because presence, realized even without drama, governs. Be still and know. Know, not feel first. Know. Let feeling come or not come. Presence is the law. Presence is the measure. And as you abide in this, the hush you once feared reveals itself as the very doorway through which guidance, supply, and peace enter and take their lawful place. Now let us see what silence really does when you stop forcing it to answer on demand. It becomes a clearing, a holy emptiness in which motives, long hidden under respectable phrases, step into view. You will notice little bargains lying around. If thou wilt only, I will. You will notice the hand on the steering wheel. I must keep control, or it will all fall apart. You will notice a polished badge called spiritual pride. I have the right method. I know the way. And, tucked right behind it, the wish to use God as a manager of appearances. Do not condemn yourself for seeing these. A human being can't help carrying such furniture into the room. But silence, because it has no furniture of its own, shows you what you brought. And the showing is mercy. The seeing is the beginning of freedom.
All right, now watch the answer chase in its disguises. It sounds noble. I need guidance. I need a sign. I need relief. But at bottom, it is the old business of getting. Getting certainty so the nerves can relax. Getting relief so the pressure lifts. Getting control so nothing surprises us. Getting specialness so we can tell a shining story about how God favored us this time. Getting. Respectable at first, then subtle, then desperate. And the more we get, the more we must get. Because appetite, being fed on effects, never comes to rest. Don't forget this. There are no detached outer effects. All flows forth from consciousness. If you feed the getting impulse, you must externalize lack, because getting presupposes not having. Now here is the spiritual shift, and it comes as quietly as breath. Silence trains you to give God your attention without requiring payment, to give up the bargaining script, to give room for presence to be presence without your edits, to give blessing to the moment that brings no thrill, to give your neighbor the courtesy of not using them to measure your worth. In other words, you begin to function from source instead of siphoning from effects. All that the Father hath is mine. If that be true, and it is, then attention given to God is not spent. It is invested in the only treasury that never empties. And the first dividend is rest. Now let us accept a little exercise. And I ask you to take it into the secrecy of your own being. Suppose, just suppose, that no sign ever comes. Can I still trust? Suppose the calendar stays blank, the phone stays silent. Can I still love? Suppose there are no gooseflesh moments, no visions, no quick answers. Can I still bless? Can I still keep the heart open? Can I still be honest in my dealings, tender in my speech, faithful to one truth? I and the Father are one, without parading my fidelity or asking a receipt. If the answer in you is yes, even a trembling yes, chains begin to drop. If the answer is no, then thank God you have seen the link that still binds. Now you know what to lay on the altar. And what are the fruits when demands fall away? You become less reactive because nothing outside is being asked to keep you safe. You become less manipulative because you are no longer engineering outcomes to soothe fear. You become naturally kind because you are no longer using others as instruments of your assurance. Your speech simplifies. Your yes becomes clean, and your no becomes gentle. The hurry eases. The need to win, to correct, to be first to the door drains out. Presence registers as order, and order appears as right action. Then, in their season, effects begin to echo this inner state. The conversation you dreaded becomes simple. The bill that threatened finds its path. The guidance you begged for stands quietly in front of you as the next honest step. But notice, you did not get these by chase. They came because consciousness changed, and there are no detached outer effects. So let the silence do its holy work. Let it dismantle the grasping self without drama, without defense. In that dismantling, a freer, giving consciousness is born. And in that birth, you will discover that what you thought you needed, you already are carrying. As presence, as sufficiency, as peace. Now let us carry this from the chair into the street. If silence has stripped you of bargaining and left you with one truth, then let that truth take on hands and feet. When you do not seem able to get an answer, begin to give, not as a trade,
not as a trick to make heaven pay attention, but because Spirit's nature is outflow, and you, recognizing oneness, must flow. Cast your bread upon the waters. Not throw your hook for a catch, cast your bread. Outgo without invoice, bless without ledger. Do you see that? It is the end of getting and the beginning of being. All right, what does this look like before noon today? Call the one you have avoided and simply say, "Thank you," or "I am sorry," without explaining yourself into innocence. Write the note of gratitude you owe to a teacher, to a neighbor, to someone who held a door years ago in your soul and never knew it. Return the thing you borrowed, book, tool, time, without being asked. Pay the small forgotten debt. Leave a quiet gift, a penny, a nickel, a dime, a loaf, a ride, a meal, a tip beyond habit, no trumpet, no story. Offer a prayer for the one who troubles you. Speak their name into the light and bless their good. Withhold the criticism that is poised on your tongue. Delete the clever email that would win the point and lose your peace. Let the other car merge. Take the later train and give your seat. Say yes to the duty you have delayed. Sweep the floor, wash the dish, answer the letter. Correct an overcharge in your favor. Give the benefit of the doubt. Forgive, truly forgive, Now you will say, "Isn't this just busyness to distract me from my need?" No, no. It is law. There are no detached outer effects. All flows forth from consciousness. Getting is the seal of lack. Giving is the sign of having. To him that hath shall be given. Not because a heavenly bookkeeper rewards philanthropy, but because when you give, you witness to source within, and consciousness aligned with source must externalize harmony. My own shall come to me, yes, but not because I traded bread for returns. My own comes because I ceased damming the river with self-concern and let the current of spirit move. The flow you release is the flow that carries you. You cannot be outside supply while you are its channel. Do not bargain with this. Do not give and look over your shoulder to see what is coming back. Cast and forget. Love and let it go. Bless and walk on. The moment you attach a string, you are back to getting. The knot tightens and the waters cannot carry your loaf. But give from the secret place, quietly, anonymously when you can, and notice what changes first. The cramped center of me loosens. The room inside fills with air. The next honest step appears without strain. Presence recognizes its own activity and supports it. Remember, silent seasons are not waiting rooms. They are training grounds. In the hush, you learn the motion of spirit. Not grabbing, not hoarding, but giving. And as you move in that motion, penny, nickel, dime, service, prayer, forgiveness, patience, honesty. The world around you begins, in its season, to echo the inner shift. You did not buy it. You became it. Cast your bread upon the waters, and let the waters be wiser. Now let us widen the circle a little. The silence you meet in your room. Do you see that the same consciousness which trembles before a quiet sky trembles before people? Now we come to a law that the Master gave us, and I ask you to accept it not as poetry, but as operation. Nonviolence is not a tactic. It is a state of consciousness. Blessed are the peacemakers is not applause for quiet personalities. It is a pronouncement of law. Peacemaking begins where hate is refused and fear is refused. Take my life, but I won't take yours, must be more than a brave sentence on the lips. It must be a condition inside in which the will to injure has no oxygen. A human being can't help having reactions, yes, but in the degree that we abide in the secret place, something else reigns. Daniel, in him innocency was found. And that is why the lions could not do what lions do. Innocency, harmlessness, draws upon a law not visible to the senses, yet absolute. All right, suppose, just suppose, that within range of my voice, a handful consent to this inner nonviolence, not as a political pose, but as surrender to God's will as the only will. Do you know what happens? Not to your newspaper first, inside of you first. The compulsion to attack loosens. The tongue that would slash hesitates and blesses. The delight in someone else's failure dries up. And then, beyond you, an influence extends, because consciousness is not private. We here could stop all future wars? Yes. Yes. Do you believe that? Not by marching on capitals with knives of argument, but by refusing, in the secrecy of our own being, to add 1 volt of hatred to the human circuit. There is a law of God that would stop them dead in their tracks, and it operates where innocency is found, where a man or woman stands unarmed within, willing to be spent, but not willing to injure. Inside of 30, 60, 90 days, that idea, lived, would start appearing across the map. Someone else declining to retaliate. Someone laying down a long grievance. A boardroom refusing a predatory triumph. This is collective medicine. Now here is the sober pivot. If you cannot hear God today, do not fill the gap with accusation. Do not indict your neighbor, your party, your rival, your own flesh. Fill the gap with harmlessness. Sit in the silence and let one truth cleanse the impulse to strike. Refuse the easy blow, the sarcastic word, the clever cruelty, the cold shoulder. Refuse it, not to be noble, but because you will not serve 2 masters. Cause is God. Hate is not a law, it is a symptom. Then, come back where wars begin and end, the inner field. If the battle is fought there, it will not need to be fought out there. End the arms race inside. The stockpile of retorts, the mobilization of old injuries, the secret rehearsals of victory speeches. Lay them on the altar. Greater is he that is within you than he that is in the world. Let that be the disarmament treaty. And as you are disarmed within, you become a peacemaker without. Your business practices change, your parenting changes, your citizenship changes, without slogans, without self-advertisement. The world's addiction to force and panic is fed by millions of small donations of fear each day. Withdraw yours. So learn peace in silence. This is not private comfort only. This is obedience to higher law on which the safety of nations rests. Cast your bread upon the waters, as harmlessness, as blessing, as refusal to injure, and after many days it returns as a quieter street, a cleaner conversation, a leader who surprises everyone by choosing mercy. My own shall come to me, yes, but ours shall come to us too, because presence realized in one becomes safety for many. Now let us make this very practical. Go home tonight, close the door, and if necessary, sit up with it. Not to force an answer, not to argue a case, but to consent. Sit in the secrecy of your own being until the need to know loosens its fingers. Fold the hands. Open the heart. Choose one truth, only one. I and the Father are one. Or, all that the Father hath is mine. Or, greater is He that is within me. 1. Then set a simple measure, 10 minutes, 15, 20, not heroic, steady. Sit and let the breath be what it is. And without drama, let the chosen truth tint the room inside you. Whisper it if you must at first, then let it rest there as an atmosphere rather than a sentence. Be still. Know.
When the questions rise, and they will rise like birds startled from a tree, do not chase them. Do not improve them. Do not answer them. Return. Return without scolding yourself. Return to the one truth and to quiet. A human being can't help having thoughts, yes, but you are not obligated to ride each one to the end of its worry. You are not in court tonight. You are in the inner sanctuary where God is cause, and effects have no jurisdiction. Let silence be sufficient. Now what if fear surges? What if the old picture flashes with force? Do not wrestle the problem. Do not look it in the eye and try to stare it down. That makes it a second God. Yield the consciousness of separation itself. Say gently, now, release it. Release the sense that there is me and there is God, and a space between to be crossed by answers. There is no space. There is only God being God where you are. Let the body soften. Let the jaw unclench and yield that gap. If you need words, speak them once. Father, into thy hands. Then return to stillness. Not to get, to be. All right. Consistency, not intensity. Night after night. Morning if you can, night if you must, but daily. Don't forget this. We have been saying it every day. There are no detached outer effects. All flows forth from consciousness. Therefore, water the root every day. Same chair if possible. Same hour if possible. Let the routine carry you when mood will not. Do not count results. Count only your willingness to enter the secret place and stay 10, 15, 20 minutes beyond the first fidgets. The habit will do for you what enthusiasm cannot. It will build an atmosphere inside you where panic cannot take long breaths. What may you expect? Not constant voices, not a pageant of signs. Expect an increase of inner rightness. Expect the disappearance of compulsion. Guidance will come as the simple, clean next step, without push behind it, and without fear stalking it. Supply will appear along paths that do not bruise you to walk them. Peace will not shout, but it will hold. You will find you can wait without bargaining. You can act without trembling. That is presence governing. So tonight, start. One truth, deep stillness, the willingness to let silence be enough. Sit until the need to know lets go, and then go to your bed under that same quiet. Do this, and do it again, and again, and the hush you feared will become your home. And from that home, your life will move in law. Now let us close the circle and say it plainly. So plainly that you can carry it out of this room without a single prop. Silence is not God leaving you. Silence is God inviting you out of effects and into consciousness, out of measuring and into knowing.
Yes. Yes. What you called absence was the first touch of presence refusing to argue in the language of proofs. Don't forget this. There are no detached outer effects. All flows forth from consciousness. Therefore, silence, which seems to remove effects from your reach, is the mercy that returns you to cause.
All right. The way has been simple, and we have walked it together in order. Stop searching for proof. That is the first step, because proof worship keeps you tied to distance. Enter the secret place. That is the second, for only there can cause be felt as cause. Hold one truth, only one, until it is atmosphere. I and the Father are one, or all that the Father hath is mine. Surrender neediness. Let the habit of bargaining die. Practice giving. Cast your bread, penny, nickel, dime. Forgiveness, service, honesty, without strings. Live nonviolence. Do no harm in speech or thought. Withdraw your contribution to the world's fear. That is the line of march. That is the law in action. Now hear what this births, and do not let anyone sell you a lesser gospel. Christ is not a sentiment. Christ is a state of consciousness, fearless of externals, not hating, not grasping, resting in inner source as law. Christ does not tremble before calendars, reports, or headlines. Christ has no enemies because it has no fear. Christ does not take from your neighbor to add to itself. It knows that since God is the infinity of my being, nothing can be added to me, and nothing taken from me. Be still and know. That is Christ's posture. Know, and let effects arrange themselves in obedience to cause. Now you say, but I have not heard a voice. That's not true as a disqualification. There isn't anybody within range of my voice that hasn't enough understanding to begin. A human being can't help wanting sensation, yes, but feeling is not the credential of God. Willingness is. 10 minutes of honest stillness with one truth is. The refusal to injure is. The readiness to bless is. You are not outside the gate. You are being addressed at the gate, and the key has been in your pocket all the while. So let us finish as we must live. Quietly, lawfully, confidently. Serene, I fold my hands and wait, not as delay, but as trust in inevitable unfolding, not as passivity, but as the strongest activity of consent to God as cause. My own shall come to me, yes, in the right way, at the right hour, without wounds, because presence governs. Silence is the doorway to that presence. Presence is the answer. Walk through and rest.